You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the show. You are listening to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. And I am Mighty Blue, the ultimate midlife crisis. The show is sponsored once more by Hiker Medals, and as a bit of a bonus today, we're going to hear from Wim Schulken, the guy who had the great idea of coming up with medals for hikers, and as you'll hear, he's giving back to the various trails through these medals. Today's main guest, though, is Rory Anderson, or Bigfoot. I'm sure that many of you know Rory through his hiking exploits and his YouTube channel, and we've been trying to talk with one another on the show for some time now, so I'm glad I've got him onto the show today. Rory will be along soon. He will reveal the strangest passion that he has, but we'll come to that later. Also on today, and definitely the last hostel owner in this series about hostels I enjoyed in 2019, is Paul Stream of The Barn in Gorham. By the way, in case you're wondering, the fact that I haven't featured some other hostels does not necessarily mean that I didn't enjoy staying there last year. Some didn't respond to my email or phone call, some were away, and one just didn't want to interview with me. Suffice to say, however, there are plenty of excellent places to stay when you decide to get out onto the Appalachian Trail. Finally, Paul Stutzman's hiking through finds us near the end, in Maine, where Paul has a terrifying encounter with a giant rabbit. But first, as most of you already know, I went on my first AT hike in 2014. When I finished, my pride and joy was that photo at the top of Mount Katahdin. It was all I needed. Then at the end of last year, after my second through hike, I was given a medal by a friend of mine. Yep, an AT medal to mark my through hike. It was amazing. It was beautifully designed and executed, really solid and surprisingly heavy, very substantial, and it was engraved on the back. Mighty Blue. My medal was made by Hiker Medals, and they are sponsoring our show today. And it's not only medals for the AT, they have a beautiful selection with the PCT, the CDT, the Camino in Spain, the John Muir Trail, and loads more from all over the world. So, if you want a special something for yourself or the hiker in your life, just go to hikermedals.com and tell them the Mighty Blue sent you. As I said, we're going to hear from Wim at Hiker Medals a little later on. But now, let's hear from our main guest this week, Rory Anderson, or Bigfoot. So today we've got a guest who I've been hoping to interview for quite some time now, and one way or another, we've always kind of missed setting up a conversation. So I'm delighted to be able to introduce you all to Rory Anderson, or Bigfoot. Hi, Rory. How are you?
Hey, great, Steve. How are you?
Not too bad. And I think that we were introduced via email by Bruce Matson, or RTK, when he was doing this. How did you get to know Bruce?
Yeah, Bruce actually came up to me. We found each other on YouTube when he was preparing for his own journey.
Because he does prepare, doesn't he? He does prepare.
Oh, yes. Yes, he does. I thought I over-prepared, but nothing compared to RTK.
Right.
He actually reached out to me and asked me some questions, and that sort of turned into a friendship, and we talked and chatted and about life, about the trail, and it was kind of took it from there. So yeah, he's a great guy.
Do you think you gave him any good tips that he took into his hike? Did he say?
I think I kind of shared perspective on the ultra-lite piece, but also on the mental piece. He was pretty darn prepared, so I think he knew what he was doing. But yeah. I think maybe I just kind of reconfirmed some of the things that I went through that just helped him continue to go down his path. And I don't know, he was pretty darn prepared from what I gathered in my talkings with him. So obviously whatever he did worked.
Oh, he got there, which is all that matters, isn't it? You get there. And funny enough, I gave a talk yesterday about my journey last year. And one of the things I said, and there were quite a few hikers in the audience who actually were hikers, as opposed to just people who turn up in the library and just listen to something. I said, the thing you have to get your head round is that thing of getting up every single day and walking and just keep the mental attitude going the whole time. And they're all nodding because they all understood that part of it, because that is the crucial thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the X factor, right?
Yeah,
The mental piece is, I think, the hardest piece to overcome. And
that's
I
right.
think what a lot of people that might not be able to make it, what kind of ends up being their demise is just not being able to conquer that
Yeah,
mental piece.
that's right. Now, the last time we tried to get this done, I said we failed, or I failed a couple of times to do this. You were about to set out to break the fastest known time, or FKT as they seem to call it these days, for the Superior Hiking Trail. Tell us how that went.
Yeah, so I made my second attempt. This was a unsupported attempt, which means that whatever you start with, that's all you get. You can't resupply, you can't get help, you can't get trail magic,
Hmm.
and I can't even use toilet paper if I so happen to find a bathroom on the way. So my first attempt was back in July of 20, I think it was 2017, and did not go so well. I took myself off. I made a poor gear choice and ended up being my demise. But this last September, I was actually able to conquer it finally. I ended on my birthday, my 38th, 39th,
Nice.
my 39th birthday, September 28th. I finished 7 days, 13 hours, 25 minutes, I believe, which was about 8.5 hours faster than the previous record. So I was averaging about 42 miles a day.
Wow, that's something. That really is something. So, what happened the first time? You said you had a gear failure. What went wrong?
Well, I, was so concerned about trying to be the lightest guy out there and getting every single ounce and gram out of my pack. I took a wind shell instead of a rain jacket.
Right.
This was in the middle of summer, and I thought I knew Minnesota well, and I'm like, yeah, I think I'll be just fine. It's going to be in the mid 80s. Well, it what ended up happening was, although the first 3 or 4 days it was like literally like 85, 86, it was really warm, which is warm for Minnesota, and the temperatures dropped. I think it went down to 52 was the high on this day, day
Wow. Wow.
5 or day 6. It was rainy. It was cold. I could not stay warm, and I just made the choice. I was about 10 miles ahead of the pace at the time,
Sure.
and made the choice. I didn't want to put myself in a hypothermic situation, so I pulled myself off. So it was the best choice. So learned a lot from.
Yeah.
I learned everything from my mistakes. So it was just another mistake.
Well, you know what? That's what everyone should do in life, isn't it? You learn by making mistakes, and it is the only way you actually learn, isn't it, really? So I want to track back a sec there because you said a fastest known time unsupported literally means you can't accept trail magic. You can't accept anything that. I mean, what else? You can't resupply. You have to take all your food with you. That sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, it is kind of ridiculous. So depending on how long the trail is, you have a substantial amount of weight in food when you start. I think that's probably the toughest thing. So for me, I'm used to carrying somewhere with the food and water somewhere in the range of like 12 to 13 pounds with a few days of food, maybe 15 to 16 on
Yeah.
a 4 day resupply. And I think my starting weight was about 27 to 28 pounds, which is enormous for me. I'm just not used to that. That was with about 8 days worth of food. So yeah, it's difficult. A lot of folks these days are staying away from the unsupported and really targeting supported hikes.
Yes,
Is
I can see
essentially,
why.
yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
I mean that rule obviously doesn't apply for the Appalachian Trail. An unsupported Appalachian Trail hike, you can't take
correct.
6 months worth of food. So the definition must change there. I don't really get that. And also, you mentioned, and without getting into too much icky detail, you said if you went to a public toilet, you couldn't use toilet paper.
Right.
So okay, well,
Yeah.
you know what? Do you know what? I'm going to pass over that because I'm not sure how that's going to work out and if that will be ready for prime time. So we won't worry about that. We'll leave listeners thinking. So I'm not going to cut it out, but we'll leave listeners thinking about that. So is that trail sort of fairly quiet, or did you have any company? If only for the few seconds as you went past them.
Yeah, I was there during the prime time, which is the fall time of the trail, and there's not really any bugs out,
Right.
so you probably have more people there than any other time of the year. I was probably seeing about 40 to 50 people a day, depending on if it was like a Saturday and Sunday when people are day hiking in the
Right.
popular areas. Then I would see a lot more than that. But there were some days I might have only seen like 10 or 15 people. So there was actually a popular race, and I can't remember what the name of it is around the Spirit Mountain area that was my last day, which was really cool because you get all of these runners. They're saying good luck. Some of them knew who I was. It just
Sure.
provides another level of motivation. And it was pretty fun. So I did have to pass up. That was the last time that I could have gotten trail magic that I had to pass up yet again. they had a little thing set up for, I think it was a midway point for the race, and they offered peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to me and everything, and I had to go through like, no, I'm sorry, I can't. Here's
That's
why.
cruelty. That's
It was,
cruelty.
but all of them were cheering me on. They're like, oh, that's so cool, and yeah, it was really neat. So a lot of fun. Now, one thing that was a challenge, I'll tell you, Steve, is I didn't realize this, and actually, the guy that owned the record before, his name is AJ Pickett Juice.
Right.
He had mentioned this to me, but I went during the prime fall, which was the end of September, and the entire trail was littered with leaves. I mean, 3 to 4 inches of leaves, of foliage. I couldn't see the rocks and the roots. People don't really know is the Superior Hiking Trail is a really rugged trail. I mean,
Wow.
really rugged. I think by day 3, my both my shoes, they're brand new shoes, had holes the
Oh
size
my
of my probably
gosh.
could fit almost a tennis ball in them, just from sliding my shoes or my feet along the rocks and scrapes. My feet were just destroyed. But yeah, it was incredible. I do want to say one other thing too about that trail. The guy that helped me, AJ, I mean, incredible sportsmanship. So typically, when you attempt a FKT, it is a courtesy, it's etiquette to reach out to the person that currently owns that record and let them know that you're attempting it, and they give them your GPS or something to track you. And
Nice.
not
Nice.
only did he congratulate me, he was actually helping me prepare training. He came out and hiked with me. He gave me all these tips. He was rooting for me on. He wanted me to beat his record. And if it wasn't for a previous commitment that he had, he was actually going to drive all the way up and meet me at the end to congratulate me. But there was a commitment he had to abide to. But he was just an incredible sportsman, and we actually became great friends. I saw him last week and we played some poker together, and he's just a great person. So I just can't say
Doesn't
enough
it?
great things about him.
But doesn't that tell you so much? Actually, it distills really what it is about the trail, the people you meet, and the irony of that is that you were doing something which really was an individual thing. You weren't hiking the way most people hike, which is basically chatting to people and stopping and sitting on a rock and looking at stuff. You were trying to go for a record. I mean, that's great that he did that. So this is different, isn't it? What you're doing there is really racing yourself and racing the mountain and racing the trail, as
Yeah.
opposed to the fun of hiking. Do you see? You obviously do see the difference, I'm sure. So how do you feel about that difference?
Yeah, I like to challenge myself.
Mm-hmm.
It was a race against time, and I'm always trying to figure out what my limit is.
Uh-huh.
And to me, I have learned so many things in life, the stuff that I've learned on the trail, and I've just become so mentally tough and been able to persevere through things and be so persistent on whatever I'm trying to go after based on just my experiences on the trail. But for me, it's a different kind of fun. A lot of people don't see that because I've had hikes like when I did the John Muir Trail a few years ago. I think I
Uh-huh.
hiked it in 12 days. I mean, there was days I did 8 miles. There's days I did maybe 20. But it was really relaxing. I was able to hike with people for about 4 days. It was great. So I have a different array of experiences.
Right.
This is just a different experience, and it really tests you. It of course tests you physically, but it's way more mental, like you
Of
talked about in
course.
the beginning, than anything else.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure it is. To think you've got to do 40 odd miles a day just blows my mind. I just couldn't even contemplate that. So, so have you been a long time hiker? How long have you been doing this?
I've been really, I guess, calling myself a hiker for maybe 6 or 7 years.
Oh, really?
Growing up, I got into the outdoors. My father would take us out camping, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world to be able to go out, sleep in a tent, to pee in the woods,
Yes.
do all the things
Wonderful.
that you do with your family when you're younger. That I was fortunate to do. And what evolved from that was me and my brother started to take annual backpacking trips. So
Uh-huh.
we targeted different national parks. Our first one, we actually went up to the Boundary Waters, which is in
Right.
northern Minnesota. It's one of my favorite places to go. But that kind of evolved, and it was actually when we went out to the East Coast, it was more of kind of sightseeing than it was going to any parks and hiking. But we went out to Niagara Falls, the Baseball
Right.
Hall of Fame, and
Right.
did the New York thing. But we went through Harper's Ferry. We knew that the ATC was in Harper's Ferry. And I knew about the trail. I didn't actually know how long it was. I knew that people had hiked it. I didn't realize how long it would take them, but I walked in there just kind of curious and walked out determined like this is something I need to do. Like this is a calling in life. It was really cool.
Isn't that funny? Don't you think so? There is something almost mystical about the AT somehow. I'm probably more than any other trail. I may be biased. Some PCTers or CDTers are saying that's rubbish, I'm sure. But for me, whenever I speak to people out the trail, they almost talk about it reverently, don't they? Well, they do. So a lot of people I speak to on the show anyway.
Yeah.
So do you feel that way as well?
I do. Yeah, I do. You know, the Appalachian Trail was the first long distance trail that I did, the longest
Sure.
trail that I've done. And the people that you meet, it's really what it is. It's about the people. The
Yeah.
people that make the trail towns, and you know, there's the camaraderie that you have with hikers. It's so incredible. I think we were talking about this earlier in a different day, but it's tough to connect with people in your life on the outside world that don't really understand what's happening on the trail, how tough that it is. And you sort of create this bond between the hikers that you meet on the trail. They know what you've been through, you know what they've been through. And
That's exactly what I say every single time. It's amazing.
yeah,
That's why you can meet a woman in her 20s and I'm a man in his 60s, and we could be almost, if you feel like, almost soulmates with them, don't you? Because you've experienced the same thing.
yeah, totally. I mean, it's so gnarly because you actually there's times where I shared things that I haven't told my best friend to some of these folks. You know, you just have this different
Oh, yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
In some of these times. I mean, you go through some really difficult times on the trail that really challenge you mentally and physically to the point where you want to break down, and you have these other folks there to help pick you up, to tell you it's okay, to share what
Yeah.
you know where they're at, and inspire you and motivate you. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just the
nobody ever
people in there.
puts you down, do they? Nobody ever puts you
No,
down on the trail. They always try to lift you up, which is quite an amazing thing. And that's so different to so-called real life. So what do you do in the real world, and how do you get away to do a long distance hike?
yeah, I consult. I work for McDonald's, the Golden Arches McDonald's, a fast food restaurant. I started when I was a kid in '95, and I
Right.
kind of worked through the ranks. And my current title is a franchise business partner. So I basically consult the upper part of Minnesota, the Twin Cities in north of Canada. Uh,
Huh.
McDonald's actually is really the big reason why I've been able to do what I've been able to do.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned uh, a lot of life skills at McDonald's. A lot of people that have worked for McDonald's say the same thing. Just that it teaches you so much about the real world that you just don't think. A lot of people think, oh, you go in there and you flip burgers. We actually don't flip burgers, but the way they've taken care of me, they're the reason why I was able to through hike the Appalachian Trail. I actually got paid to through hike the Appalachian Trail at 108 days from
No.
work off. Yeah, I was the only person on the trail. No, one of two people on the trail that actually had a job that I met. Most people were retired or were in between college semesters or
Right.
taking time off of a job and quit. So, but yeah, it was really neat to not just have the time off, but to actually get paid for it was just incredible.
Well, as you mentioned, you did the AT in 2016. In fact, you did it was it exactly 100 days?
Yeah, actually, I thought it was exactly 100 days, and someone had reached out to me and corrected me and said that. So I started, I think it was like 9:30, or excuse me, at noon on Springer Mountain on I think it was the 23rd of April, and I got done on the 31st of July at 9:30 in the morning. So technically, it was like I don't know, 99 days, 21 and a half hours. So it was actually, I could say it was a sub 100 day hike. Um,
Cool.
yeah, it was really cool. So I didn't think about that. And the other cool thing too, actually, I learned. So when I was hiking on day 3, I was going up Kelly Knob up in Georgia, and this guy
Mhm.
just zoomed past me, and he had to be about 70, and I'm just like, wow, this guy, and he was probably carrying about the same load as me. Maybe I'm sure his base weight was somewhere around 10 pounds, but he was just cruising, and it was late in the day. I'm like, wow, this guy moves fast. I wonder when he started, and I actually saw him on Mount Katahdin on my way up. He was going down. He actually
Wow.
started the same exact day as me and ended the same exact day as me. So he actually did a 100-day through hike, but we never saw each other outside that time. He got way ahead of me in the first half, and I caught up to him in the second half, but it was pretty neat.
That is the amazing serendipity of the trail, isn't it? You can literally be hiking around somebody within hours of somebody probably and never see them.
Yeah.
Yet and yet you see someone 1,000 miles later. No, it's just incredible. And the fact that you saw him so far apart is extraordinary. And so was that 100 miles 100 days, you did it because you wanted to do it quickly? Was it a function of time, or do you just like racking up those miles and walk however comfortable you are, just walk that many miles that day?
Yeah, it was because if I wanted to keep my job, I needed to be back in
All
under
right.
108 days. So
There you go. That'll
everything
sort it
was
out.
built
Yeah.
around that. Yep, yep.
Yeah.
If I would have had all the time in the world, for me, it probably would have been like a 4.5 month hike.
Right.
Contrary to what some may think, I really did enjoy myself on the trail. And I actually, there was a period of 18 days that I hiked with a couple of German guys that I friended. I slowed down, they sped up, and we really enjoyed ourselves. We actually hiked into Harper's Ferry together and really started this friendship. I think it was last year. No, I guess I can say 2 years ago now. That I went out to Germany, meet up with them, and we went out and hiked the Tour de Mont Blanc,
Uh-huh.
which is probably the most beautiful trail that I've ever hiked.
I bet it
And
is beautiful there.
yeah, yeah.
I've
And then we
skied, I've
spent some
skied
time in
there,
Germany.
so I know what it's like. So it must be great to hike.
Oh, it's incredible, incredible. For
Yeah.
for any skill set. So yeah, it was great. So anyway, but it's just amazing, like these friendships that you make on the trail, and
Absolutely.
a lot of people don't realize that I actually had opportunity to hike with some folks for an extended period of time, weeks actually, when I was
Mm,
out there. So it's pretty cool.
cool. So now to do these long distance trials quickly, and you've already referred to it about base weight, you keep your pack weight down, and I hear about 7 and 8 pound base weight, which is to me absolutely ludicrously unachievable. How much do you carry? And can you talk about the subject without getting too geeky about it? Because this can get that way. How do you carry such a light load? Or because I'm going to go again myself. I'm going to Scotland to do some hiking, and I really want to keep my weight down as low as possible. What do you do to get it as low as possible?
Yeah, well, it's all about, experience and understanding what you need and what you don't need. So for me, my base weight, depending on the trail and the time of the year, but like on the Superior Hiking Trail, I think it was about 7.5 pounds, somewhere around that.
Wow, wow,
Now it wasn't buggy, so I brought a tarp for a shelter instead of something that has a mesh screen where I need to keep the bugs out. So that obviously made a difference, or else it probably would have been over 8 pounds. But
much as that.
yeah, yeah, I know. What's about what I tell people is, it's really about a balance of safety and comfort. There are things I just won't sacrifice. Like I always bring a GPS with me,
Right,
so my family can track me. If
sure.
something ever were to happen to me or another hiker, I have an immediate way to get rescue, and plus I have some other folks that track me as well.
Which is your preferred one then? What do you use?
I use the Garmin Mini InReach
Right.
Explorer. So I had the bigger one for a long time, and then I just went to that one.
And what does that give you then, Rory? Does that give you the ability to text, or is it just a locator?
It gives me the ability to not just locate, but yeah, text. If I don't have cell phone service, I
That's
can
good.
tell my
That's
wife,
good.
"Hey, everything's going well. This is where I'm at. Have a great night." We can have two-way messaging,
Right. Nice.
and obviously it's got the ability to send SOS if you needed it to, and you can do other things too with it.
Sure.
Certain devices you can download maps and stuff, which I never used, but you can get weather
Sure.
and things like that.
You take your tracker, which is more of a necessity when you've got people who are worrying about you, obviously at home, obviously.
Yeah.
So you take that. What else do you take that keeps the weight down?
Well, my big three, the big three, a lot of people probably heard this, but that's where you can cut the most weight. So, I have a frameless backpack.
Hmm.
Currently, I use the Z-Pack Nero. That weighs somewhere around 10 and a half, 11 ounces, which is, with that pack, you have to be ultra light, or it's not going to be very comfortable.
What's the capacity for that one then? I've got the Art Blast, CPAP's Art Blast, and that's I think 19 ounces, maybe 16. I'm not sure. So your one's 10 ounces. So how small is it?
Yeah, I think it's 38 liters, if
Oh,
I'm
right,
not mistaken. So,
right,
yeah, I used to. So before I had that pack, I used to always carry my duplex, which I love the Z-Packs duplex tent. But
yeah,
with the pack that small, and when I'm doing something like the Superior Hiking Trail, I wouldn't be able to fit all the food in it if I brought the duplex tent, which is why I brought that tarp tent. But
yeah,
but yeah, I'm typically right now I'm using the Hexamid. pocket tarp from Z-Packs, but again, that doesn't have any bug netting on it. So I would either use a duplex, or maybe I haven't gone in and bought the Plexamid yet, but something like that would be if I needed a little bit more of
Protection.
a shelter,
Yes.
protection for bugs and stuff. And then I kind of use a variation of bean quilts. So I have the Solo Down from Z-Packs. I have a 20 degree, I have a 30 degree, and then also I use some stuff from now I'm just forgetting the name of it. I
Don't
haven't
matter.
talked to you in a couple
We
months.
don't need a full gear check. But I'm saying,
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
once you got the big three, do you take, and you regarded the Garmin, I guess, as a luxury, but it's not. It's a necessity for you. So what else do you
yeah,
take then? Because I can't see. I don't know why mine
yeah.
turned out to be. I had 27 pounds of food and water on the trail, so my base weight was about 17. That seemed incredibly light to me. But now, yeah, and I can easily carry that as well. I don't find that any problem. But I'd love to take 10 pounds off my weight. So what
Yeah.
else are you taking in your pack?
I cut a lot of clothing out, so I typically just have whatever I'm wearing, and then maybe a extra pair of socks and extra shirt, and that's about it from just general clothing. My rain jacket is my most versatile piece of equipment.
Right.
I always bring a down jacket, but I wear my rain jacket more for warming myself up, breaking
Right.
wind, things like that, than using it actually when it's raining out.
Sorry, breaking wind.
Yeah, breaking wind, exactly.
Yes, that
No
means
pun
something
intended.
different over here, obviously.
It does.
Okay, you go. Yeah,
But yeah, I cut things to minimal, like with first aid kit and stuff. I do bring one, but it's just very minimal. But I think between the big three and the clothing, I cut a tremendous amount of stuff than what probably a lot of hikers, I would assume, typically bring on their back. But so I have a YouTube channel, Follow Bigfoot, that I kind of talk about
yeah,
my gear list. But again, it really goes back to you have to be comfortable with it. Like for me, I have to bring a sleeping pad, and I actually do bring a inflatable pillow. A lot of folks will sleep on their clothing and things like
yeah,
that, which I
yeah.
did on the Appalachian Trail. Then I just realized I get so much better sleep when I actually sleep on an inflatable pillow. I got a little hack that I use to keep the pillow in place. I
I
have on my
saw that
channel.
on your video channel the other day. You
Yeah,
attach your pillow by a jacket or by a sweater or shirt or something like that, don't you? So your pillow doesn't slide around on your pad.
yeah. I actually I got the idea from Stick's blog, and then kind of made it my own. And so I have all these little things that I do, but I have to sleep on an actual air mattress, which I have an ultralight one. I use the Uberlight right now, but and a pillow, contrary. But that helps keep that balance for me with comfort.
Sure.
But again, I'm never going to sacrifice safety. So I told you the story about on the Superior Hiking Trail, my first attempt, and bringing a windbreaker instead of an actual
Yes.
rain shell.
Yes.
And that's an example that I just, learn from those mistakes, and I just don't ever want to sacrifice, put myself in a situation.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this has come up a few times in conversations I've had with people where we are getting down so light now. It makes you wonder how much lighter you can go without sacrificing safety and warmth and that sort of thing. So we are right at the point where we can't get much lighter. But even then, carrying 10 or 12, 15 pounds on your back is nothing anyway, is it? 'Cause when I first did my hike in the AT, my pack was 42 pounds when I started, and that was fine.
Yeah.
Because I was 245 pounds, so that didn't seem too bad to me. But yeah, so the second time I did it, I think I lost something like 15 pounds. I was down to 27, which for me was absolutely fine. I didn't have any problem with that at all. So tell us, I want to talk about the channel, Follow Bigfoot. Before you do, why are you Bigfoot?
Well, I was talking about the annual backpacking trips that my brother and I went on.
Yeah.
And when we went on our first one up to the Bounty Waters, we went on a very tough trip. The portage to get on the first lake was 2.5 miles long, and
Oh, dear me.
it's only fools do that. We were a fool, so we wanted to be really secluded, and that worked. So when you're together with someone and you don't have a lot of human interaction,
Sure.
you tend to get really weird and talk about crazy things. And I think it was like night 2 or 3, we
Guys,
were
guys do.
yeah, totally. But we were talking about what ifs, like what would you if, what would you if, and the topic came around of Bigfoot, like what would you do if all of a sudden you heard the clanking of the oars, and you look out the tent and there's a family of Bigfoot taking your canoe and stealing it and paddling across the lake and just like stupid things. We're just super weird.
Of course.
But
Of course.
we started to get this love for Bigfoot. So everything we talked about was this idea of Bigfoot, and Bigfoot always had a hatchet, and we would talk about how accurate he is. If he wanted to, he could shave the hair off your head if he wanted to. Just these funny little quirks. And anyway, so Bigfoot became our spirit animal on all of our hikes. We're huge Bigfoot fans.
Sure.
And when I told my brother that I was officially going to through hike the Appalachian Trail, he knew about the trail name thing because when we went to the ATC, we learned about it in our trip out there. And he said, you have to be Bigfoot. That has to be your trail name. And I said, yeah, I think so. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's how it turned up. I didn't know there was actually 5 Bigfoot names on the trail, on the Appalachian Trail, the year that I did it. There was
Really?
Bigfoot the
5?
Good. Yeah,
Oh
there was
my God.
Bigfoot the Good, Bigfoot the Bad. I think I was Bigfoot the Fast. I know there was a female Bigfoot, and then I'm not sure about the 5th one. But yeah, there was like 5 different Bigfoot that were on there. So it was a little confusing. Yeah, the Bigfoot the Bad actually. The reason why he was Bigfoot the Bad is he went out and he graffitied his name on everything, and a lot of people thought it was me. And so I'd be like, "Well, do you really think that I'm out there doing this and doing the trail in 100 days?" I'm
At the
like,
speed I'm doing it, yeah.
that's pretty incredible. I'm like, I don't, yeah, that is against my values. And I actually had a ranger reach out to me on my YouTube channel at one time, saying, "Oh, I found you. I've been looking for you." And I'm like,
Oh God.
dude,
Oh
that's
dear
not
me.
me. I'm like, you really think that I had time for that? But anyway, so I digress.
But it worked out for you anyway because you got to follow Bigfoot. So how did that come
Yeah.
about? Because it's really growing. I think you've got about 43,000 followers on that. Was that something that you wanted to document for yourself, or did you plan all the time to have this channel where you would give advice?
Yeah, I started it because I was researching how to through hike the Appalachian Trail in 100 days. I knew I had this very short time frame, and
All right.
I could find everything I wanted on YouTube except for that. Doing it really fast. No one had a vlog. That's what I was looking is for a vlog.
Right.
And I did find a blog for someone that wrote his entire journey every day, 100 days. I think his name is Blue Jay, and it was incredibly helpful. But I thought, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to at least have some sort of vlog and video, do a documentary of how I was able to do this. I had
Right.
no clue what I was doing. I watched some of my videos and I just laughed because it's pretty bad. But I wanted to give that back to folks that maybe were in a similar position as me, because there's actually a lot of folks that are in between their school years or are teachers that have the
Sure.
summer off that have a
Yes,
very
all
short
right, yeah.
period of time. So plus I wanted to show my family like what I'm actually going through. So that was the whole purpose of starting it. And because I had my trail name before I started, I just went with Follow Bigfoot because it was open and got the
Straight
website,
into
got
it.
the YouTube. Yeah.
I think that probably helped you because it's a good name anyway, and once people get into these video logs, they can't wait for the next one, can they? Especially when they subscribe and they get an email saying there's a new one up there, and people go straight to it. And I think they're wonderful, and there's some good and some bad, obviously, as well. And I know that on your channel, you teach others about hiking, you show some of your hacks and so on. So, what has hiking taught you, and probably more important, what has hiking taught you about yourself?
Well, yeah, that's a loaded question. I've learned
It's meant to
so
be, by the
much.
way.
Yeah, yeah. I've learned so much on the trail. So one of my core I have a few core values: family, integrity, humility. I tell you, I was humbled on the trail. What I learned, I didn't realize how many things that I took for granted in life.
Sure.
Just the simple things like a hot shower and a hot
Yes.
meal and sleeping in a bed. So
Flushing toilets.
yeah, flushing
I
toilets, exactly.
it
Uh,
always makes me smile every time I flush a toilet. It does, really. I think, "Oh, isn't
yes.
that cool?"
Yes. Oh, totally. So it taught me a lot about humility that I, take into and became a core value of mine
Yeah,
in life. I learned how to really be mentally tough. You really learn grit when you're out on the trail. I mean, to persevere and do the same thing over and over again is, even though the scenery changes, but it's tough to get up. And I think a lot of folks struggle with that.
sure.
They almost think of it as a job. And I was able to do little mental mind tricks to help prevent myself from going down that rabbit hole and enjoying it. When I got to the northern part, a lot of the northbounders were kind of ready to be done, and I was still having a great time. So, but I really attribute this how it that challenged me and how I'd have mentally overcome that. So my mental toughness and my persistence, I really learned from the trail, and I apply that to life, to work, to everything.
Do you think the trail brought that out in you, or did you already bring that to the trail?
I think I had a form of it,
Right.
but it really it showed me what I'm capable of. And
Right.
and that's the reason why I've done a lot of these, like the FKT here this last September is what's my limit now? Like what can I possibly accomplish? I mean, my
Yes.
whole purpose of doing the FKT, I mean, I wanted to see what my limit was, but there was also an underlying purpose too. So when I through hike the Appalachian Trail before I started, I was probably 40 pounds overweight, and I had a lot of
Right.
people say, maybe 20 people say I couldn't do it. I was too fat. How can I do it in 100 days? That
Sure.
sort of thing, which really fueled me. And this next step in my journey, when I look at and I look at a lot of these records, a lot of the folks that do it, not everyone, but a lot of them are these ultra marathon runners, these
That's
these
right. Yeah, they
superhuman
are.
athletes. At
Yeah.
least that's how I see my eyes, because they're incredible, like what they're able to do. Run these 100K races. And, so I am not ultra marathon runner. I have run marathons, but I'm not one of these superhuman athletes that is super fit. I could definitely lose about 15, 20 pounds comfortably. So to me also it was proving that, hey, like a regular guy can do this. I want to prove that a regular person can go out and do it, because I want to show others that they can do so much more than what they think they can.
Damn
'Cause,
right,
you
damn right,
know?
and that's inspirational, Rory. Because I know my listeners write in about people inspiring them. Because I got an email not a few weeks ago actually. This person said to me, "I'd always thought this was just for young kids, young fit kids, and it
Yep.
just isn't, is it? I mean, you're a guy in your late 30s, and as you say, you're a couple of pounds, not many pounds overweight, but you're a fit enough guy. But really, anybody can do this. I used to say that they can do it if they can walk 200 yards without needing oxygen. And basically, if you can just move, can't you? Just keep moving.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, how we do it is gonna be a little bit different from person to
Sure.
person. Like me doing the FKT, yeah, I
Yeah.
I had to walk 16, 17 hours a day, whereas the previous folks, my friend AJ was probably having to do it in 2 less hours, so he maybe got a little more sleep. He did get injured, by the way. He actually broke his foot, so had he not
Cool.
done that, I don't know that I would have been able to set the record, because he woken up broken foot the last 2 days. But people, I think a lot of folks just don't understand what they're really capable of. The human body is capable of so much. It's absolutely incredible, Steve, what
Yeah.
it's capable of. And I always like to look at my own body and like what its limit is. But I hope it provides some inspiration for people to get off the couch and go out and do something maybe they thought that was a young person's game, or maybe a fit person's game. Anybody can do
Sure.
anything they put their mind to.
Now, I know you're about to be slowed down a little bit because you have had a recent life change, haven't you? It's going to make your future adventures a little bit more difficult. Tell us about your recent news.
Yeah, I've had quite a bit of personal things. Me and my wife got engaged in February of 2020, so it would have been 2018,
Uh-huh.
and we got married in October, the Saturday before Halloween. So we actually had a Halloween themed wedding, which was a whole nother story. But
I'm going to ask you
um,
about that in a second because that's
yeah,
hilarious.
but we got married on the 28th of October, and then we went down to Disney. My wife had never been to Disney before,
Right.
and Disney is truly magical, Steve, because we got pregnant down there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
cool.
we are expecting right now. Tomorrow will be week 15. So
Wow.
the end of July is when we're expecting our child. So we have a lot of cool things happening in our life. We're starting our family, and it's actually it's the big reason I've taken a little bit of time off from YouTube the last few months, just to kind of sort out all my personal stuff and get
I'm
the first
sure.
trimester was a little tough, like a lot of women
Yeah,
do, but my wife had some difficulties, and I wanted to be there for her. So I'm
absolutely.
getting to the point where I'm ready to come back to YouTube. But it's just been an incredible journey. It's my parents' first grandchild. And all my brothers got actually married within the last year, so they're all trying to have kids. They've lived in the same town
It's a
as
race.
me.
It's a family race. Yeah.
Yeah. In a couple of years, we're gonna have 3, 4, 5 little ones at my parents' place on Christmas running around. It's gonna be really cool that we're all gonna grow up together.
Well, congratulations for that. But I'm going to have to finish this with you telling us about. And I think your YouTube subscribers know this about you. You are crazy about one particular time of the year, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Halloween. Yeah, I take it to a whole new level. It started back in my childhood. I just have this nostalgia for Halloween. I remember the folks that did the big decorations, who had the best candy, handed out the full size candy bars. We were always the kids that would be first out trick or treating, and the ones that knocked on the door or rang the doorbell last. So we were out there as long as we could to get as much candy. And that love for Halloween, though, just to be someone that you're not for one night. I like to actually scare people. So half the time I was dressed up as something that I could scare my brothers or my sister. But that transformed. Back a few years ago when I lived down in St. Louis for work, I started this my display. It's a graveyard. It's grown throughout the years. And last year, we actually, in a town of 4,000 people, we had 1,000 people show up on Halloween at our
to your graveyard, which is is that your front yard?
Front yard.
Front garden is your graveyard,
yeah,
is it?
It's probably, I don't know. I have 250 feet of graveyard fencing, so however long that works out to, but it's my entire front yard. We actually had a haunted house in my garage, and we're gonna expand on that. My dream someday is to actually own my own haunt, which is, I know, super weird from what most people want, but yeah. It's actually this will be the second year, but we got invited to go down to St. Louis. They have the biggest haunt convention trade show down for all the folks in the haunt industry down in St. Louis. So
there's a haunt industry. There's a haunt industry. Oh my God!
Yeah. The third week in March, they all congregate down for the biggest trade show that they have of the year down in St. Louis. It's really incredible. Wow. I'm in my moment. Like that's it for me. Like being down there with people that are as crazy about Halloween as me.
So you're going to frighten the crap out of this kid, aren't you? Really?
Yeah.
You have to try and frighten it straight away. You must. I tell you, you must. I don't know if you've got them. I'm sure you have. Send me a picture of your front yard. That will be so damn cool to have that in the show notes. Well, look, it's been lovely sharing this conversation with you. I'm so glad we did catch up in the end. And thanks for telling me about your hiking. You really are an inspirational guy, and I'm so glad we did this. So thanks very much indeed.
Hey, it's all my pleasure. Thanks so much, Steve. It was great talking with you.
Take it easy. Bye.
Right, you too. Bye-bye.
He is such a down-to-earth bloke, isn't he? And that Halloween stuff, oh my God. You want to see the picture I've got in the show notes. But I love the way he speaks as a regular guy who just happened to break the fastest known time recently. As we've often learned on this show, it isn't necessary to be superhuman to get out on these trails. You just have to be, well, human. I just want to thank those of you who have stepped up again this week and supported the show through your donations. Somebody called Lisa, and I know who it is, but I won't tell you her last name, decided that she loved the show so much that she wanted to donate $20 a month. That is so kind of you, Lisa. Remember, the donation button is on the mightyblueontheat.com podcast page. Thanks to all of you who've stepped up. So now let's have a brief chat with Wim Schalken and his hiker medals. Here's Wim. I'd like to introduce you to the guy who's actually paying for this week's show, our current sponsor, Wim Schalken of Hiker Medals. Hi, Wim. How are you?
Hi, Steve. How are you? Thanks for having me on the show.
I'm good, thank you. And you're so welcome on the show. And thanks so much for sponsoring the show. I really appreciate it. And as you know, I wouldn't do this if I didn't think this was a great idea anyway. Because I've got one myself. And I was really so touched and excited when I got my medal a few months ago. What gave you the idea in the first place?
Well, it's funny though. So I used to be actually, I'm still a runner, and as a runner, you often at the end of a race you get a medal.
Yes.
And I wasn't necessarily a hiker, but in 2016 I got the opportunity at my current job to get a sabbatical, and I saw the documentary Mile and a Half. That's kind of
Great
document.
one.
It
About
is
the John Muir
wonderful.
Trail. That is the
Yes.
one that got me got me hiking for a second time after my AT hike. Yeah.
Exactly. Me too. And I'm still sometimes in touch with the documentary makers, and I tell them, this is all your fault. You did this, right? You started this.
Right.
So that gave me the idea to hike the John Muir Trail. And when I was preparing, I thought, this is going to be such a big effort.
Sure.
And when I'm done, there's nothing to show for it, and which is very strange. And I felt almost embarrassed to come out, to talk to people about it, because you're in this nature and it's a beautiful environment. You got this fantastic once in a lifetime experience, and you're worried about a medal. But so I thought, what? I do think I do cherish those medals that I have. So I thought, well, why not design one myself? And
Sure.
then so I did that, and then worked with a company in Dallas. And the problem is you can't just order one,
right?
And or have to order 100. So I was like, well, you know what? Let's take a leap of faith and let's just try it out. And that's what we did. And the funny enough is, so when it came in, and this was before I went on my trip. When it came in, I did use social media. Say, hey, this came in. I'm so happy with the way it turned out. I'm looking forward to my my trip. It exploded. I thought people would really send me hate mails like, "What are you doing? Right? This is just dumbest thing ever." It was so well received, and I get all these requests. How about the PCT? How about the Continental Divide? Right? So got a lot of requests and great feedback, and that's how it all started.
So you did 100 John Muir Trail medals, did you?
Yes.
Did you?
I did.
So you wanted one and ordered 100. Quite right too.
I know. Well, and to be truly honest, and this is my wife's fault. She actually said, you know what? Because it turned out so nice. She said, order 200. Who knows what's going to happen? So we actually ordered 200 at that time.
Wow.
And they sold out in no time. It was crazy.
Well, I tell you, the quality of the medals is really, really tip top. How did you find a viable manufacturer? Did you know about this sort of thing?
No, nothing, absolutely zero. And what I wanted to work with a local company in Dallas because there's a lot of back and forth, and still is. The process itself is that, for me, it's all about the hiker, right? So you hike a trail, and what is important on that trail that you want to remember? And you have to cover everybody, right? And I haven't hiked all these trails. That would be crazy.
Yeah.
So it's really like a picture of the trail itself. So I do the original design, and then I work with them. Okay, they need to finalize it, to put it in the software that then can work with machines that in the end will make those medals.
Sure.
So for me, it was really finding a local company that could work with me on that. So I can really go to them and visit with them, and we work together on the final products.
Cool. And what are they actually made of?
It's some kind of alloy zinc that is made of. And it's funny, though. So they're all kind of silver color. Sometimes we get the request, do you have a gold one? I was like, no, you can't really be first, right?
That's right. You can't be first. You're definitely not going to be first at any of the trails. There's no doubt about that.
So I do get that question sometimes, but so the high quality, they're big, but not obnoxiously big, right? So they're big enough to be substantial, but and they feel heavy indeed. They're about 5 ounce each.
Yeah, they really do. And so just so people know, hikers, or in fact friends of hikers, if you want to buy them for a hiker, you can get the medals engraved on the back, can't you? Is there a limit to the number of characters people can use on the back?
No, there's not. And that's probably sometimes is a mistake from my side, because people write whole novels on the back. But that's kind of the cool thing, right? For me, it's not about, you get 10 characters. You can, normally I say, just send me what you want, and then I'll make it work, right? Because every one is set up individually, and I'll just make sure it works. And sometimes it gets really small because they have Bible verses on there, or just other quotes, or
that's nice. I think that's lovely. I mean, I'm not a religious man, as everybody knows. I keep telling them, but I think that would be beautiful to have some Bible verses on the back, something that means something specific to the hiker. I think that's a great idea. I really do.
Right. Yeah, it's the funny thing though, Steve, is and sometimes people, they have dates in the future, they have them engraved. Sure. And I always tell them, if the date is not going to work out, that may be your permit date, but anything can happen. Just let me know, send it back, and I'll give you another one with the correct date, right? Or people, they do proposals, right? And they have this to commemorate the proposal. Or very emotional. It's a memory of somebody, and it's very touching. I once got a an email from a customer, and he had given it to his mother, and she had hiked the John Muir Trail in 1965. Can you just imagine, right?
Yes.
And she was actually dying, and he was able to give it to her on a deathbed, and they put it on there as a token of what she was able to accomplish at that time, which was amazing. And that's what you do it for, right? It's just how it touches people, and just it helps to remind them of that. For some people, once in a lifetime event.
Yeah, or in my case, twice in a lifetime.
There you go.
I did
exactly.
the AT twice. How about that? Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and I've actually got 2 AT medals right now, by the way. So, what's the latest count of available trails? I know they're all over the world, aren't they?
They're all over the world. By heart, we're around 30 right now, and I get a lot of requests. For this year, my target is to do one new one every month.
Right.
It takes me a while. It takes me normally about a week to 2 weeks to get a design finalized. It starts with an idea and need to go back and forth a little bit, and then I work with the company to finalize it. It's about two weeks for one to finish. And I got a day job as well, so this is not a full-time
all right,
thing.
You actually work.
Yeah. Yes, I actually do work. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's sweet old-fashioned notion.
Right?
That's funny. So how do people order them from you? How can they?
So we have a website. It's called hikermedals.com. And that's the easiest way to order them. It's all there. All the different medals are on there. The cool thing is also 10% of all the revenue goes back to the trail organizations.
Yeah.
So some medals have a dedicated beneficiary. And for me, because this is never about money, this was just about sharing something within the hiking community and having this as a means to help these wonderful organizations that work with volunteers to keep these trails updated, to keep us safe, because the Inyo Search and Rescue, for example, is one of our beneficiaries as well. It's just a great way to help these organizations that way. And for some, it is just minor stuff, right? But it's more symbolic as well. Like, this is what you do.
No, it's important, and I really appreciate the fact that you do that. And I'm so delighted you agreed to sponsor the show for some episodes, and your ad's going to be on, or will have been on this week, and it will be on next week. So, and I really appreciate you coming and talk to us about it.
Thank you very much, Steve. I really appreciate it as well.
Take it easy, all right? Bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
What a humble guy, and so caring about the trails. He doesn't make a lot of money on these medals, but he still gives back to the trails and associated groups. Fantastic. And thanks for sponsoring us again, Wim. While I remember, thanks to all of you who have supported the new Hiking Radio Network show, JR Hikes the Appalachian Trail. The first episode was officially published this past Monday and has been well received. In much the same way that I followed Bruce Matson a couple of years ago, the first few episodes will be Ryan and me chatting about his preparation as he gets ready to leave on March the 1st. Then, when he's on his way, it will be all Ryan, as he records his adventure and lets me publish it. It will be about as real time as we can make it. So look out for JR Hikes the Appalachian Trail wherever you get your podcasts. And talking about wherever you get your podcasts, also this week I finally uploaded the whole series of podcasts from Dixie's hike on the Continental Divide Trail to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's called Dixie Live on the Continental Divide Trail, and they're all there. Now for our final hostel, and it's The Barn in Gorham with Paul Stream. Well, I found myself in Gorham on my hike this year, in fact last year, and unlike 2014 when I went to the White Mountains hostel, this time I went a little bit further into Gorham and I found myself at the Hiker's Barn Hostel, which is a kind of sister hostel to the Libby House. The owner is Paul Stream. Hi Paul, how are you?
Hi Steve, how are you today?
Well, I'm good, and apparently I sound a little like Piers Morgan. You told me just now when I called you.
You sure do.
I find that hard to believe. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or an insult, but I'll take it as a compliment.
It is a compliment, believe me.
Cool. So I've got to say straight away that I loved my 2-day stay with you guys. How long have you actually been in the hostel business?
I've been here for 10 years. The hostel itself has been here for 35 years.
Oh, wow. How many owners has it had then?
We're the third owner. We are the third owner. The original owner was 35 years ago, and it's had 2 owners since us. It's never closed down. One hiking season the whole time it's been here. It's always been open.
For how long? Say 10 years?
I've had it for 10 years. My cousin Bob Marcy and I, we purchased it together. He wanted the bed and breakfast part of it. He owned a B&B in Salem, Massachusetts, and then he wanted to move further north, so this came on the market. he called me out of the blue one day and he said, "Do you still want to own a hostel?" I said, "If you can find one that's for sale, I'm still interested." And so the rest is history. We came up here, we looked at it, and we purchased it 10 years ago.
So the Libby house is the bed and breakfast piece, which I suppose if they want to pay the price, the hikers could stay at. But the hostel is in the grounds, isn't it? Right next to the Libby house.
Actually, it's attached. You can walk right out of the house and go right into the barn.
Oh, and didn't even notice that.
We keep 2 rooms open all season long just for the hikers in case, they want to upgrade a little bit and want a little bit more privacy. Well, we keep 2 rooms open all hiking season long just for them.
Right. What was the hostel like when you got there? Was it much like it is now, or have you made many changes to it?
I made quite a bit of changes, actually. I put in a game room, made the lounge area much bigger. We have a large screen TV. A lot of them like to get in and, watch the movies there. Yeah. But today with the telephones, a lot of them, we have free Wi-Fi. Of course, that goes with the price.
Yes.
Then the beds up in the loft were all bunk beds when I first came here, and I didn't like any of them. Right. I tried them, and I just didn't like them. They weren't comfortable, so I took them all out and put in real beds. I have queen-size beds, full-size, and twin-size beds. And it cut my bed space in half, but I wanted the hikers to be comfortable because I did the trail in 1974,
right? And
we didn't have hostels back then. If there were any, I didn't know anything about it. So all the mattresses are very comfortable, and, it's a nice variation. Bed space is up in the loft. It's an open space. It's airy. And it's really nice. I've had a lot of compliments for what I've done here so far.
I'm not surprised, the place is very distinctive. And you go when I started going up those stairs, I thought, oh my God, there's going to be tons of beds jammed in together. But there's a really kind of, I don't know what the word is, probably respectful distance respectable distance between the beds. So you got tons of space. My bed was really comfortable. Mine was at the top of the stairs, just as you turn around the corner, just to the right. And it seemed to be quite a good size bed as well. And as I say, incredibly comfortable. So you lost how many spaces did you lose up there then?
Well, I've got, I think it's, I have 16 beds up there now, and I had double that.
Wow.
And my thought was, and my process was, if they get in here and they get comfortable, maybe they'll want to stay an extra day,
Ah, there we are.
And that's what happened. A lot of them come stay 2, 3, and even 4 days. And they have the convenience of being right here in town,
Yeah. I think the further north you go, the more important these towns become as well, because they seem to be less and less. And your place isn't a great spot. It's just a short walk to all the shops and restaurants, isn't it? Did that really factor into your thinking when you got this?
Yeah, that was my main reason. I was looking for a place that had accommodations where you could be close to things, and they're really hard to find. Hostels don't come up on the market too often.
Sure.
They're either passed on to family members or even some of them close. But I liked it because right across the street we have a Cumberland Farms. If they want snacks and
yes.
soda or whatever, they're open all night long over there.
That's right.
So you're not restricted to be kind of locked down in a certain place, and then you have to wait when the shuttle's ready to take you.
Yeah.
We do Walmart shuttles every day also to get them up there, and so they can get their supplies and get ready to go. We have a full kitchen if they want to cook their own meals. Within the hostel, they can do that. A lot of groups do that also.
Yeah. I mean, it is a very comfortable place, no doubt about it. And what do people get for their money? So they come to you and they want a bed. What do they get? They get the access to the kitchen. They've got the showers, which are excellent, by the way. They've got the space to watch the videos. You've got the Wi-Fi and everything. And what other runs do you do? You do Walmart. And what about your pickup points and your drop-off points for the trail?
It's $25 a night, and I do allow tenting. I have a nice tenting ground, too. It's only $15 a person.
Right.
And that includes all the shuttles. Even if you want to slack pack, it's a 2-night minimum to slack pack, which you would want to stay 2 nights anyway.
Of course, yeah.
Walmart, and then I pick up at the Route 2 Rattle River trailhead. That's all free. If you want to be picked up at the Pinkham's Notch Visitor Center,
yeah, we will.
It's a 2-night minimum stay, and that's a free shuttle too, up and back. And all the shuttles are included in that price. From what I understand, I'm the lowest price hostel in the whole region here, maybe even on the whole.
And there he was gone. I don't know what happened, but the recording cut out just as he was saying the word trail. He'd mentioned slackpacking, so I picked right up on that when we got back online. So in 2014, I was hiking with a woman called T-Bird and a guy called Lighterknot and another lady called Trillium, and she would refer to what she called slackpacking opportunities. So what is a slack pack out of the barn? Where do you take people to and where they come back to? They obviously come back to you, but how far forward do you go?
Okay, the slack pack is called the Wildcat, is the name of the mountain,
right.
And it's a 21-mile hike. We do that when northbound.
Yeah.
And it is a tough hike. Some hikers want to do it southbound because they're southbounding, but I encourage the northbound because it's a little bit easier.
Right.
And most people who do that come back to me and say, Paul, I'm so glad that you encouraged me to do this north instead of south. And what happens is I take them up to, it's a 18-mile run up to the Pinkham's Notch Visitor Center, drop them off.
Yeah.
We usually leave out of here around 7:30 in the morning. And I take them up there, and they're on the trail within 15 minutes thereafter. And it's a 8 to 12-hour hike. Some have done it sooner than 8 hours, but the minimum time is like 8 or 9 hours. My thought plan was time means nothing to me. When they're done, they just call us. We come and pick them up. It doesn't matter how long it takes them. I've gone down as late as midnight even and picked them up and brought them back to the hostel.
Man, that's a long day, then, isn't it, really? So you've been doing this for a few years. Do you enjoy it?
I love doing it.
Do you get a kick out of this?
I absolutely love doing it. I mean, I tell friends of mine who want to own a hostel, remember something. You have to be in it because you like helping people, because that's really what it is. It's a service to help people in their endeavor, you know?
Yeah, you certainly feel welcome there. I've got to say, you made everybody feel welcome there, and I love that. Some of these places, they really do not make you feel welcome at all. But, I always felt that we were very comfortable in your place, and we had a lot of fun there. So I really enjoyed that. And as you've been doing this for years, and as you are a previous through hiker yourself, have you become aware of change?
I did the trail in 1974. So it was a lot tougher then than it is today. I mean, we didn't have cell phones or, there wasn't any hostels that I knew of back then. And, so I kind of know what their needs are,
Yeah, but are those changes in the trail and then changes in the hikers changing the needs? I mean, are you finding things in the last few years that you didn't even think about 2 or 3 years ago?
Actually, I kind of knew what they needed, and I would take little bits of information, some suggestions from them. And the biggest thing that I find that they don't like waiting and I get that. And when they want to be picked up, they want to be picked up. They want to be brought in. They've been out there for days, Sure. And to me, that is my trademark. People know when they call us, they're not standing very long. We come and get them in and get them comfortable, and so they can get their hot showers. And I show them where the restaurants are in town. Yeah. I mean, and we didn't have a cell phone back then, so we have a good Wi-Fi service here. It's a nice, strong signal here for them, and I kind of, listen to what they have to say and give them the service that they need, because I love doing it. I really like the younger ones, especially. I admire them so much.
I admire the old ones like myself.
Well, I admire the old ones too, but
I admire them all, actually, to be honest with you.
Right. I mean, it's just something to see some of these kids come in. And, I look at them and I think, man, when I did it, I couldn't pay my friends to do this, to walk the trail. And they would look at me like, you're crazy. Are you crazy?
Yeah. Well, these kids learn great skills, don't they? They learn how to manage their lives, how to manage themselves, don't they?
It absolutely does. And I've had friends of mine who own some pretty, Fortune 500 businesses. And when they put on their resume that they did the trail, a lot of times they would rather hire them than to hire the average Joe, because they have that fortitude to complete such an endeavor as that.
I agree with that. And were I an employer these days, I would, because I know what it takes to do the AT, I would certainly want to employ somebody. But I wonder if people understand it enough to understand why they should employ them. But I certainly think it's something that youngsters should put on their resume, because it shows a certain grit and spirit that, most people don't show, doesn't it?
I couldn't agree with you more. I could not agree with you more. Just stop and think about what it takes to whether you're going north or south, and of course the trail I know is a lot different now than it was in my day. I'm sure it's been moved around a little bit over the years, but it's still just as challenging,
Trust me, I was exhausted when I finished. So you're absolutely right. So are you guys seasonal, or do you operate as a hostel all year round?
Well, the hostel doesn't have heat, so it's not heated, but the B&B is open year-round, and we do have the 4,000-footer, I think it is, plus club. We take in a lot of them who even like to go up and hike in the wintertime, believe it or not. And but the B&B is open year-round, yeah.
Cool, very cool. So how should people get a hold of you? Because I presume you're in all the guides, aren't you?
I'm in the AWOL guide. I'm in the Hiker's Companion. Any of the guides, I think I'm the Gut Hook app. We're there, and then we're online. Of course, you can Google the Libby House, and the Barn Hostel will pop up right next to that. And if you want my phone number, I'll be more than happy to put it out there. It's 603-466-2271.
That's great. Well, and it's the Libby House your email address is thelibyhouse@gmail.com, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah.
You can go online too. Yep.
And I'll put your the website in the show notes as well. Well, look, as I said to you, this is actually the last of the conversations I'm going to have with hostel owners. I thoroughly enjoyed spending time with you guys there, and I really appreciate the welcome you gave us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for including us in your shows. It's very nice of you.
That's absolutely my pleasure. You take it easy, okay? And hopefully if I ever do this again, I'll come and see you again.
All right. Thanks a lot. You take care, Steve.
Okay, buddy. Take it easy.
Right.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Nice bloke, eh? And I really did enjoy my time at the barn, and I highly recommend it to you. As I said earlier, this hasn't been an exhaustive choice of hostels, but I think we covered a lot of the really good ones, so I hope you give some of them a visit on your journeys this year. Now, it's on to Paul Stutzman and the wonders of Maine, along with a very, very big rabbit indeed. I'll see you next week. Chapter 23, The Main Event. In the quiet of early morning, I heard my chipmunk friend scurrying about. I shared my breakfast with him and stored away as many calories myself as possible. The most difficult mile on the trail was ahead of me that morning. Before that notorious mile in Mahoosuc Notch, though, I crossed Mount Carlo, the 3 peaks of Goose Eye Mountain, and the south peak of Fulling Mill Mountain. Between the mountain peaks are the sags, low points filled with murky water, wet and decaying plants, and sphagnum moss. I dropped in to visit one of these bogs the day before, and, much to my dismay, I made a return visit this morning. Crossing a board over a sag on Goose Eye Mountain, I took a misstep and once again tumbled into the oozing mess. My backpack halted my plunge, and I used the board path to pull myself out of the gooey slime. Leaving a trail of filth, I climbed a rock and shook and scraped off as much of the moss and fragile alpine vegetation as possible. I soon found a creek along the trail that, in comparison, looked clean and pure. I jumped in with clothes and shoes still on, hoping to shed more of the swamp. A change of socks, and I was ready for more adventure. Imagine the letter V, with Fulling Mill Mountain forming one side and Mahoosuc Arm forming the other side. Mahoosuc Notch is the bottom of that V. It's a mile long, it's narrow, and it's filled with a jumble of boulders, many as large as cars or even houses, that have fallen from the opposite cliffs. I'd read hikers' accounts of traversing the notch, but nothing had prepared me for this most difficult mile on the Appalachian Trail. There was no path. The white blazes came sporadically along the mile, but they served only as assurance that I was still following the AT. Each hiker must find his own route over, under, or around the boulders. Those strong and brave enough can sometimes jump from rock to rock. I did jump from several boulders using my Grand Canyon safety scale, but I was substituting moose for death. A moose trapped in the notch had broken its leg in a fall. We'd been reading the story in hiker comments in the shelter registers. Hikers had tried to get park officials to put the moose out of its misery, but the official policy seemed to be to let nature take its course. Register entries voiced vehement disapproval of this course of inaction. One hiker attempted to do the job himself with his own knife, but apparently the moose disapproved of that plan, and so the unfortunate animal had slowly died of starvation. I passed the skull and bones, all that was left of the huge creature. Someone had strung Buddhist prayer flags nearby. Was the moose a recent convert, or was the gesture simply a tribute to its suffering? When I wasn't jumping, I was squirming under boulders, pushing my backpack ahead of me. Little streams flowed under the rock piles, and sometimes I even discovered large chunks of ice, well protected from the summer sun. A cool mist filtered up between the rocks. The notch was air-conditioned. When I at last reached the north end of the notch without breaking a leg or having a house-sized boulder fall on me, I found that the second and third most difficult miles were up Mahoosuc Arm. I stood at the end of the notch, looking upward at an almost vertical trail, and shook my head. It's impossible to go up there. But there was nowhere else to go. Grabbing tree roots, searching for toe holds and clawing for finger holds, I pulled myself upward over the next 2 miles. By 4 o'clock I was exhausted, and I had only covered 9 miles. I stopped at the Speck Pond campsite overlooking Speck Pond. In Ohio, a pond is a small body of water, usually under an acre in size. In Maine, a pond can be anywhere from several hundred to several thousand acres, and often several square miles in area. Thunder rolled over the pond. Moving inside, I set up my tent on a wooden platform with a view of the water, placed rocks on the corners of the rainfly, and retired for the evening. Trail Journal, Speck Pond. I am very tired and smell like a swamp. One exciting thing happened this morning. I went over 1,900 miles. Only 274 mainly hard miles to go. Since it was still early, I studied my guidebook, planning the next several days. The next day was Sunday, and I'd hardly seen anyone for 2 days. I needed a town stop. 15 miles up the trail, I'd cross East Bee Hill Road. Andover was another 8 miles down that road. My guess was that East Bee Hill Road was not a major thoroughfare, and I'd have little chance of getting a hitch for those 8 miles into town. Perhaps I'd have cell service on top of one of the mountains, and I could call ahead for a ride. Early Sunday morning, I trudged up Speck Mountain to an elevation of 4,180 feet. Then the trail dropped to 1,498 feet at Grafton Notch. It was a roller coaster day, with climbs to mountain peaks followed by drops to the sags between, where boardwalks crossed more oozing bogs lying in wait. I hiked those areas with extreme caution. Baldpate Mountain was bald, devoid of trees or foliage. Rock cairns marked the path up and over its west and east peaks, and then over Little Baldpate Mountain. At the summit of East Baldpate, I stopped to take in the views. Maine is a state of spectacular beauty, with range after range of mountains dotted by ponds. On East Baldgate, I had cell service and called Pine Ellis Lodging in Andover, hoping to persuade someone to pick me up at the road crossing. A woman answered the phone. "Ma'am, this is the Apostle Paul, calling from atop Baldpate Mountain. I would like to stay at your house tonight." "You have to be kidding," she replied. "I can't believe this." "What can't you believe? Do you have room for me at your place tonight?" "Yes, I do, but it's your trail name that shocked me. I was sitting here reading a book about the Apostle Paul, and the phone rang. And it's the Apostle Paul wanting to stay at my house tonight. It's just such a strange coincidence." She agreed to have someone pick me up at the East Bee Hill Road at 5 p.m. "Oh, by the way," she added, before she hung up, "my husband's name was also Paul. He passed away from cancer not long ago." Even out here, in the middle of nowhere, God was still throwing coincidences at me. At Pine Ellis, my hostess and I sat at her kitchen table and shared our losses. Her husband had lived only a few months after his diagnosis, and her heartache and grief were still raw. I assured her that healing would happen. We just never know when. Memories of our lost ones will always be with us, but the acute, overwhelming anguish will lessen at some point. We do find life on the other side of grief. I had left the shackles of my grief in a puddle of tears on top of F's mountain 3 weeks before. Many folks remain stuck in grief because they can't comprehend why God would take their loved ones. We get angry with God and question why he would subject us to such terrible loss. But if it were up to us, when will we ever allow God to take our son or daughter or spouse? The answer, of course, is that we would never choose it. We don't want to die, and we don't want our loved ones to die. If the choice of when to die were left to us, this world would be filled with sick people. Each of us lives in a small slice of measured time, inserted here between eternity past and a never-ending life hereafter. From the moment of your birth, death becomes inevitable. Your little slice of time is so fleeting. Whether you live on this planet 10 years or 80 is insignificant to God. What is significant is your choice of paths that will lead you to the end of your time here. For those who do not believe in God, my thoughts on life, death and eternity will make no sense. If you came here to read an adventure book, just skip ahead a few paragraphs while I talk with those who have suffered a devastating loss in life. We question, why God? Why? Each of you must answer one question for yourself. Is God in control or not? If you believe he is in control, then he knows the whys and whens and wheres of your loss. If you don't believe God is in control of these difficult situations, if you believe that all that happens to us is random and beyond God's powers, well then you still need to skip ahead a little further. If you could comprehend heaven and your bliss your loved one is experiencing, and if you also had the power to bring that person back to earth, would you? When you can finally say, no, I would not bring her back, your journey to the other side of grief has begun. Perhaps instead of lamenting our misfortunate loss of loved ones, we should wonder why God chose them as fortunate enough to join his celestial city. If you've blue blazed to this paragraph, welcome back. It's good to have you with us again. Rejuvenated by a hot shower, I walked to the Andover General Store and Diner to resupply. My first Sunday in Maine ended with a pint of Hershey's chocolate ice cream on the Pine Ellis front porch and conversation with other hikers lodging there. At 5 in the morning, I was back at the diner. Huge breakfast started my days with an extra burst of energy, but these mountain climbs and difficult trails exhausted me by day's end. That day, I crossed Wyman, Moody, Old Blue, and both peaks of Bemis, struggling through 19 miles. At Bemis Mountain lean-to, I set up my tent, too weary to write more than one paragraph in my journal. Updating my daily miles in my guidebook, I added a one-word description of the day. Wow. The sound of raindrops against my tent that night was a sign of things to come. Rain would be my constant companion for the last 2 weeks of my hike. Early the next morning, as I wiped the water off Big Agnes, I was already thinking about finding a dry room for that night. 18 miles away, the trail crossed Route 4. At that point, I would still have a 9-mile hitch into the town of Rangeley. I was crossing the Bemis Range, walking over an area of smooth and rounded rocks when a noise startled me. I stopped when I caught sight of a mother grouse just a few feet in front of me. She was foraging for food under the bushes at the edge of the rocks, her 4 little chicks scurrying after her as she bustled and scratched. When I looked up and started down the trail again, a large fog bank was rolling down the hillside to meet me. After 1,900 miles, I was still fascinated by these amazing vignettes in nature and still thankful for my good fortune to witness such scenes. 10 hours of stream crossings, stretches of well-marked trails, walks over long slabs of solid rocks, and wet and muddy paths brought me at last to Route 4, my thumb in the air. Before this AT hike, I'd never hitchhiked in my life. Now it was my mode of transportation on the highways. Fortunately, the folks in Maine weren't as judgmental as I had been in my previous life, and this dirty, wet, bearded hiker soon had a ride into Rangeley. Rangeley is a small tourist town surrounded by 110 lakes and ponds, a town that caters to snowmobilers, skiers and fishermen. I stopped at the lovely Rangeley Inn and asked for their cheapest no-frills hiker rate. The young man in charge actually had one such room. It did have a bed and a shower, and that was luxury enough for me. I found a restaurant and enjoyed a huge steak dinner. These town stops with good eats and extra calories always made for a stronger hiking day. I also stopped at a grocery store for supplies for the next several days. More mountains and more rain. The next day took me over 3 large climbs, Saddleback Mountain at 4120 feet, the Horn and Saddleback Junior. When I wasn't labouring up a mountain, I was fighting treacherous mud at the lower elevations. Toward evening, I was hiking alone through a cold and miserable rain on Lone Mountain. The wind howled around the mountainside and tried to shove me about. I was still 2 miles from Spalding Mountain, where I'd planned to stop at the shelter, but I was exhausted. Along the trail, ripe blueberries grew in abundance, and I stopped to gather and eat many handfuls of the delicious morsels. My arrival at the shelter was delayed a bit more, but even in the cold and blowing rain, I could not resist an evening snack. At Spalding Mountain Shelter, I quickly erected my tent in front of the building, then went inside to catch up on the news in the register. Many entries spoke of a very large rabbit that visited this shelter. The stories sounded wild and unbelievable, and I wondered if perhaps some mind-altering substances had contributed to the unlikely tales. My water was filtered and I was dry, inside my tent for the night. Something bumped up against the canvas. What was going on here? I flipped back the tent flap and was face to face with the largest rabbit I've ever seen. Had I eaten psychedelic blueberries or some other plant that caused hallucinations? Could this creature be real? Quite unalarmed at my presence, the huge thing turned slowly and hopped away. I'm not exaggerating when I say it was 4 times bigger than any rabbit I've ever seen back in Ohio. I never imagined there would be a night that I kept rocks within reach to protect myself from a rabbit. As I left the shelter in the morning, a voice behind me on the trail shouted my name. I turned and my first glance fell on a white flute protruding from a backpack. "Good morning, Padre. How's the toe?" "The toe's fine, but I need to get into a shelter and dry out. I was trying to catch up with you, but got caught in the storm up on Lone Mountain last night." Padre had tied his hammock to 2 trees and spent a cold and miserable night in the rain on Lone Mountain. "Let me warm up and get something to eat, and I'll catch up with you." "Nice sticks you have there, Padre." He explained that he had indeed lost his girl's ski poles. Now he has somehow acquired an unmatched pair of lecky poles. I hiked ahead while Padre stopped at the shelter. I was struggling over slippery rocks on my way up Spalding Mountain when a sound stopped me in my tracks and brought tears to my eyes. Haunting notes from a flute drifted through the mist on the mountainside. I'd often heard Padre play a melody on his homemade flute. That morning, however, as I stood alone in the Maine woods, the sound pierced my soul. Never in my life had I worked so hard toward a goal as I had struggled to finish this hike. I just wanted to reach that silent Katahdin and go home. But I'd been so engrossed in the physical difficulties of the hike that I hadn't given much thought to what would happen after Katahdin. 200 miles from where I stood, Mount Katahdin waited, with that sign and the finish line. Then what? The notes from the flute, dropping through the mountain woods, sang the song of my life on the trail. This trail had become my life. My fellow hikers were my family. I discovered peace and a sense of normalcy out here. My body had gone to previously unknown limits of exhaustion, but my mind was on a path of freedom. Now the floating melody stirred emotions I didn't know existed. I wept as I realised how much this trail experience meant to me. I cried for what had been, what was, and what was about to end. The last notes of the flute drifted away. It was time to start walking again. I've been alone in these woods for the last 100 miles, so I was happy when Padre caught up with me. Our big climbs of the day were South and North Crocker Mountains, both over 4,000 feet. By the middle of the afternoon, we'd crossed 4 mountains, forded 4 streams, hiked over slippery rocks and through muddy paths, and stood at the edge of Route 27, 5 miles from Stratton. Huddled under pine trees, seeking shelter from pouring rain, we had no difficulty convincing ourselves that we needed to go into town. Hitchhiking was unsuccessful, but I had cell service, and the owner of the Stratton Motel agreed to drive out and pick us up. All evening and night, the rain poured down, but we laundered our clothes and ate a delicious meal at the White Wolf Inn. Padre and I hiked in the rain for the next 2 days. The rain had turned the trail into a miniature bog. Undergrowth along the trail was so thick that we could not walk alongside the path. There was no choice but to slog through mud and running water. Crossing a small mountain road at the base of Little Bigelow Mountain, I reached a major landmark in my journey. In the middle of Long Falls Dam Road, someone had painted the number 2000. The few cars and log trucks passing through probably never saw it on the pavement, or if they did, they wouldn't guess its significance. But any through-hiker crossing that road certainly knew what that 2000 meant. Several southbounders had highly recommended a stop at a hunting and fishing camp near Pierce Pond. Harrison Fish Camp served a lumberjack breakfast that included 12 pancakes, sausage, eggs, juice and coffee. A makeshift bridge over Pierce Pond stream brought us to the primitive but wonderful camp in the middle of nowhere. Padre and I rented a cabin, and that evening I journaled by the light of a kerosene lantern while my clothes hung drying on the front porch. Life was good. The lumberjack breakfast was bliss. The 12 pancakes were the best I'd ever eaten and were gone in no time. 3 miles beyond Harrison Camp, I stood on the banks of the Kennebec River. The level of the Kennebec is controlled by a dam, and in years past some hikers have attempted to ford the river at low levels. One hiker lost his life attempting to cross, and so the official route across the Kennebec is now canoe. The white blaze is painted on the floor of the canoe that ferries hikers from one bank to another. Anyone fording the river now is blue blazing, although that choice was not a consideration for me. With the abundant rainfall, the river was now 12 feet deep where hikers used to walk across. On the south bank of the Kennebec, where I stood, a signal flag was provided to summon the canoe. I waved the flag, and across the river another flag acknowledged my call. A canoe pushed into the river, and my ride was on its way. Beyond the Kennebec, the trail crossed US Route 201 at Caratunk. I loved these little Maine towns and regretted that I could not stay and explore. It was still early in the morning, and my goal was to reach Bald Mountain Brook Lean-To. That would be an 18-mile day and would put me within a day's hike of Monson. Padre and I reached my goal at 6 that evening, but it turned out my goal was not his goal. "Let's try for Moxie Bald Lean-To," he said. "That's over 4 miles away, and we'd still need to cross Moxie Bald Mountain. It's impossible," I lamented. "We can do it in 1.5 hours. Just keep up with me." Why do I fall for these challenges? Once again, I risked life and limb trying to keep up with someone. But Padre was right. We made the Moxie Bald shelter and found a lovely setting. A small and primitive building perched on the shore of a placid pond. The shelter came equipped with rain, but wasn't this a standard amenity at all Maine shelters? A rainbow arched over the neighbouring mountains. Rocks jutted into the pond, and Padre relaxed on the rock formation and played his flute in the last of the evening light. The notes of the flute and the glow of the rainbow both faded away, and another day in Maine was finished. Monson, Maine, is the last outpost of civilization for hikers facing the 100-mile wilderness. This stretch of untamed Maine is much like the previous 100 miles, but it lacks towns and resupply points. Hikers are advised to leave Monson with a 10-day supply of food. I had planned for 7 days on this last stretch of my journey. That also meant I could take a much-needed 0 day in Monson. It was a rocky 18-mile hike to Monson with several tricky river fords. The current was especially swift on the west branch of the Piscataquis River. A small island split the river. I waded toward it, through rapidly flowing water that reached above my knees, praying for safety. Fortunately, I did have a man of the cloth behind me to recall any last words I might utter should things go badly. The trail followed the gorgeous river for several miles through the woods, crossing the waters again where the river widened and was shallower. Years ago, the AT passed through Monson, but a relocation had taken the trail 4 miles west of town. The old trail still existed as a blue blaze trail, and anyone but a purist could cut off 3 miles of hiking by using the old route. I was sure that Fargo would not have a difficult decision to make here. The shorter blue blaze trail might even make it possible for him to catch up with me. When the trail crossed Main Route 15, I attempted to call Shaw's Lodging in Monson, but I had no reception. The rain was coming down, and I resigned myself to a 4-mile road walk into town. A young couple took pity on me and pulled over to pick up this rain-soaked and dirty hiker and graciously dropped me off in front of the boarding house. I booked a room for 2 nights, showered, and went downstairs to wait for Padre. Padre was a stronger hiker than I, but whenever a town was in range, no one could catch me. Breakfast at Shaw's is a glorious event, and I happily experienced it twice since I was taking my last 0 day here. Each hiker at the table is simply asked, "How many?" The answer determines the size of breakfast served. A 3 got you 3 of everything: eggs, bacon, sausage and pancakes. There was no limit on the number. I thought 6 was about right for me, but I was too embarrassed to go that high, so when our server circled the table, I just ordered 3. Halfway through the meal, I got the server's attention and held up 3 more fingers for the last half of my breakfast. It was a beautiful day in Monson, the first day without rain in how long? I almost couldn't remember a day without rain. I set out on my errands. My final food box was waiting at the post office, and I stopped at a store for glue and tape. My shoes were coming apart, casualties of the daily battle with rocks, roots, mud and water, and I hoped to hold them together for the trek through the 100-mile wilderness. I spotted a library and stopped in to use their computer. I'd been isolated from all world events since Fargo had abandoned me. On my way back to Shaw's, a booming voice came down the street. Fargo was coming down Pleasant Street, waving his arms wildly. "Hey there, Apostle! I finally caught up with you. I got to say, though, this trail's a humdinger, believe you me." "It's great to see you again, Fargo. How's the missus? Did your house sell? Let's get you checked in and find something to eat." I relaxed on my 0 day in Monson, visiting with Fargo and other hikers. Fargo and I discussed our plans for the 100-mile wilderness and Katahdin summit. He had his usual concerns and worries about this final trek, but I assured him that if he stayed with me, we would summit 8 days from now on Wednesday, August the 13th. Back at Shaw's, I sat with other hikers and caught up on trail news while I attempted to work a glue and tape miracle on my shoes. Within reach were a slice of pizza and a pint of chocolate ice cream. I knew I was one fortunate man at Shaw's that night. All my needs were met. I certainly had enough to eat. I had a soft bed and I was dry. It had not rained that day, though I would hike in rain for the next 7 days. And I was among friends. Tomorrow I would start the 100-mile wilderness with its trials and difficulties and final push to the finish line. But that was tomorrow. Tonight at Shaw's, all was well.